when you have something that works, you've got to squeeze out all the value that you possibly can. And so we had a model, go to enterprise clients, talk about a use case that's meaningful, get them successful, and keep iterating on that. So the second year, we did $2.2 million in bookings.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Vivek Sharma. How's it going, man?
Good to see you.
Dude, so good to see you.
Yeah.
Old friend, Canadian, but New York City, running a large 50 million plus ARR SaaS company.
Yes. I'm not Canadian.
Are you not?
I'm not Canadian.
Why do I think that?
Because I'm nice. Is that the thing?
Dude,
I've never played hockey.
Context, I thought
Never
it was
played
Toronto.
hockey.
I thought there was something there. Maybe. Did you ever say I feel like an honorary Canadian?
I went to school in upstate New York.
That's
and,
it.
you
I knew
know,
there. I
think
feel like
there's
Toronto. I don't know why my head.
I've lived in the cold, and I went to a hockey school, RPI. So maybe
Dude,
there's something
yes,
there.
yes. So if you know hockey, then you're Canadian, I guess. Anyways, appreciate the time, man. I'm super excited to
good to see you again.
You as well. Last time we saw each other, we were
hanging out in Dublin. Some amazing
skeet
photos.
Shooting.
Skeet shooting. Guinness in an Irish pub.
Always.
Just all the activities. I'm still trying to. It was a really.
It was SaaS
really good
Talk,
put together.
And shout out to that if you guys get the chance to go. And in the SaaS Society.
Yes.
The second part, a lot of people didn't know about this, but
it's a secret.
The secret 2 days. It was 2 days afterwards where I think it was kind of 3 mil, 5 mil ARR companies plus got together and shared. I mean, some cool founders like the Hotjar founders. Is it teamwork.com? That guy from Dublin.
Yeah. And I want to thank you. You did a cool panel with me and Mark Organ from formerly Eloqua. Just on culture, company building, the stuff you've learned. I thought that was really
it was a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity because I think you brought it up was it's easy to talk about like strategies of doing stuff, but at the end of the day, it's how do we deal with the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why I wanted to create this show to talk about escape velocity and building momentum. Your journey, I believe it's getting close to a decade-ish.
Yeah, we'll be 9 years old in October this year. 8.5 years so far.
Yeah, so we met a long time ago. And what was the product when you first started versus today? I know it's evolved, but I mean at the core, I feel like it's similar.
Yeah. So Movable Ink is the company I started. We offer something called a visual experience platform, and I'll get into that in a bit around category design and naming a category. But very early on, what we observed was companies were sending out lots of emails, and there are these email service providers that can help them segment their lists, get the email in the inbox, make sure they get delivered right, but content was an afterthought. No one was making sure or giving you the tools to make sure the content was very tailored for every single individual you're emailing to. This was weird to us, and we were like, why is no one else doing this? Exact target, responses, the enterprise ESPs, ET, responses, Epsilon, Cheetah Mail. This wasn't really the core focus. And we built a technology that we thought was kind of interesting, which allowed us to change emails at the moment it opened.
Yeah.
So the second the email gets open, we could detect contexts. Weather outside,
device.
It's snowing outside, you're in New York, it's 7 p.m., you're on an iPhone. And that was sort of the genesis of this. And there were some early use cases that were pretty simple.
Such a great name for that.
Yeah, we call and the name was evocative, so that was we put some thought into that. The name we didn't go with, and it was a serious contender, was Pick Later. We own picklater.com. So you could have been sitting here talking to the CEO of Pick Later, which would be really just lame. And Movable Ink just ended up being the thing, and it has changed a lot. So in 8.5 years today, what this visual experience platform really does, brands have a ton of data about their customers. They have data about the state changes in their business. It might be sitting in their CDP or their DMP or their CRM, or they're using Pega for next best action or OfferPop for social content.
All these enterprise tools.
We plug into all this stuff. We can absorb any data. We can tap into any live data source. We can tap into any content source, including your own website, and intelligently combine it, activate the data, and generate the perfect creative for you in that moment, in the millisecond that you're engaging with it.
So what does an average deal look like for you guys? Like what's the size of customers you guys go
So
after?
our customers do skew to enterprise or large mid-market.
Yeah.
So we've got brands like Hilton, American Express, The Gap, Starbucks that we work with. And then we've got some mid-market-y type of clients. I know Columbia University was using us. Warby Parker is using us.
Super cool.
Casper, I want to say, either we're talking to them or they're using us. So there's over 650 brands that we work with. And so it varies. But on the enterprise side, probably the smallest we'd ever do a deal is maybe $30,000 or $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
But we have a great land and expand model. So we can get the initial one or two really compelling use cases, get one team live, and then over time, this gets into the mid to high six figures and even north of $1 million accounts. We have several customers paying us. There's one customer almost paying us $3 million.
So is that like when, I'm assuming you guys have do you do outbound sales, inbound? What's the...
We've experimented. We've learned a lot of stuff about everything.
Channel partners?
Channel partners.
Channel partners.
Yeah, we've done it all. We've tried it all. And years ago, I read Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross.
Good dude.
And good dude, good book.
Yeah.
Wrong model for our business.
For sure.
So I think that works a lot more with more of an inside sales team,
Totally.
BDRs, inbound lead qualification.
Easy to get decision maker. Yeah.
Eventually, where we ended up was ABM.
Yeah.
Kind of figuring out
Love it.
before it was named.
Yeah.
But we have a direct sales team.
Somebody said that to me once. They said, it's like a named account sales process before it was called ABM. It's like,
Yeah. Isn't this what
It's
people
just a
used to
named
do?
account.
Salespeople used to take you to the baseball game and spend time with you and know who they're
steaks
talking
and
to.
other stuff. Yeah. So you guys use an account-based marketing. Do you mind if we dive into how you guys do? I'm just, I mean, what are those touch points if somebody's thinking of doing that?
Yeah.
How would you approach it, and what do you guys do?
Yeah. So I think maybe the difference is there's a lot more data that we analyze today. So at the start of every year, last year or 2 years ago was the Inc. 1000. We call it our, and we have our own Nifty 50 of like dream accounts that we're really going after.
Yeah.
And there's a good amount of data crunching that happens.
So you segment right off the bat, qualify. These are the people.
We say these are good prospective customers for Movable Ink.
So you use the Inc. 1000.
The Inc. 1000, and there's some work that's done there. We look at, here's some key industries that we've been really successful at.
So segment on industry.
Retail, travel and hospitality, financial services, and media, entertainment, and publishing. And there's a little bit of art there too. There's people who can name accounts that they just want to go after and they feel like they're big meaty accounts.
Yeah.
And we build that list and a little art, a little science, and we come up with that, and then we divvy that up into territories. And so I think right now, I want to say maybe 40 accounts is what an average rep has that they're going after, and we make sure that's kind of refilled constantly if things are coming out of it, and we sell deals. But we're far more effective because of a finite list. What we found was we were running this engine that was just like hungry for more and more opportunities, more leads, more. And if you look at the scale, like you're not going to find 20,000 companies that look like a Starbucks.
Yeah.
And the inbound model just wasn't working. And being more focused, giving reps fewer things to go after, but making them more thoughtful about what that approach was going to be like, yielded much greater results.
And would you divvy up industry per rep so that they were going after similar types of accounts, or just geography?
We haven't done that yet.
I think
in the future we might consider that, but it's more geographically based right now, and our reps do work with some accounts in this industry versus that industry.
And you do geography so that if the reps get on a plane, that they can essentially make their visits?
Yeah, it's a mix of, I wouldn't say it's pure outside sales, but there's some emailing, some phone calls, and then there's on-sites. We do see a lot of success in making sure, having those on-site meetings.
For sure.
And we'll pull partners in. So our partner program is something that's also evolved.
How does that, I definitely want to come back to the sales stuff. How does the partner program work for you guys?
Yeah, years ago, we probably stumbled in. So our first partnership, we stumbled into our first partnership when I was invited to the Cheetah Mail conference unofficially. We were 10 people, and the VP of sales said, just sort of walk in there, walk the floor, keep a low profile, a low profile. And it was a very exclusive event. I remember they had It's celebrities, Ed Mariah Carey at their like after party, and it was just me and Ryan Pipkin.
Oh, man.
You remember Pip?
I love Pipkin, yeah.
Yeah. So he was our first sales rep, and so the two of us just kind of walked the floor.
I think is that how we met? Through Ryan?
Could have been the engine yard days.
Oh,
too.
wow,
So
yeah.
maybe that, and then through Ryan
yeah,
again.
yeah,
So multiple points again. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out.
So we walked the floor. We had these conversations. We kind of crashed their conference, and we started generating good business and started to sell those. And the next day, I meet with their VP of BD, and he was a skeptic. And then
So
quickly,
Cheetah Mail ended up being a technology partner in the sense that your product worked on top of Cheetah Mail?
right? We always felt
so
like the
there was no
ESPs.
conflict. You weren't trying to steal their
We
customer.
felt
Okay.
we're not going to be an
Let's
ESP.
not
We're
try to
focused
compete
on
in that
content,
space.
but hey,
Yeah.
could we partner with these guys?
Perfect.
And they were skeptical at first, and then they jumped in with both feet. And back then, it was sort of a battle of giants. The Clash of the Titans. ET was fighting Cheetah, which was fighting Epsilon and Responsis. And Cheetah felt like they needed a weapon in their arsenal, and we didn't know all this.
Yeah.
Suddenly, they were really interested in our company, and I negotiated a partnership which was semi-exclusive for a year, but I didn't really believe they'd be very active. Most partnerships are just that on
Never.
paper,
Yeah.
and they went all
I call
in.
them
They did.
Barney relationships where you both agree to hug, but nothing happens.
Yeah,
Remember the big
I like
purple
that.
Barney?
I like
Yeah,
that.
that's usually biz dev.
Yeah. So joint webinar, they gave us a platinum sponsorship to their conference. I did a talk at their conference, and it was like wall to wall.
So I love that you did a joint webinar. So you actually like created some content. They promoted it to their audience.
Yeah.
You delivered it.
I was interviewed. Yeah.
I mean, people don't realize like a lot of companies that could be distribution partners, like they just don't have content. They don't have somebody willing to present something.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's so lightweight as just a strategy to get your name in front of
Slow.
perfect customers too, right?
Low commitment. You can do this. You should be out there speaking at as many things that are complementary. And now we're doing that too. We have a vibrant partner network, and we work with Curelate and Pega and Bluecore and you name it. The joint stuff has turned out to work really well for us.
And then on the back of the webinar, you prompt them for a demo or reach out or
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Cheetah Mail specifically, the client services teams were our biggest proponent. So it wasn't the sales team. We kind of muck up a sales process because they have a long sales process, and selecting an ESP is a big deal.
Yeah.
But their client services team needed to go into QBRs and talk about something meaningful.
Expansion
They didn't have
revenue,
anything for a little while, and they were getting a little antsy about that, and ET was eating their lunch a little bit.
exact target. Those that
Exact
are not,
target. So we were the thing that they brought into every single meeting, and suddenly we were just inundated with all of these interested prospects, and it was like you threw jet fuel on the business, and we could barely keep up.
So that 1 year exclusive worked out to be a pretty good deal.
In retrospect, you're like, exclusive, no way.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the bandwidth to take on more
They
than one
needed you
ESP.
more than you knew it at the time.
We didn't know that at the time.
And then you capitalize on that. And then, but what's cool is that you see the pattern. Then it's like as soon as the exclusive goes away, you can get ready to.
Yeah, and then others got FOMO because they were
Yeah.
like, hey, how come Movable Ink? What is this thing,
What is this?
Movable
Why is everybody
Ink?
talking
How
about
come
it? Why
Cheetah
do we
has
don't
it? How
have
come
it?
we don't?
Yeah.
And we got so much inbound. Like Ryan Pipkin's strategy was to ignore emails from prospects until someone like bugged him enough because he had such a high volume. I thought this was crazy. A little
When
rude.
you're,
but
trying to create pipeline. He's like, let's just
yeah,
ignore
but
them.
Ryan was just, I'm going to eat all of this.
Yeah.
And that worked really, really well for us. So we learned from that. We started partnering with other ESPs. And lots of things, resellers didn't quite work for us. When you have a new product, you have to educate the market on it. If you got a commodity, maybe a reseller can sell it and explain it, or just flip a switch. Return Path had that model with a lot of the ESPs.
Yeah.
But the explaining to the market what this new thing is and how to use it.
It's a lot more involved.
Yeah,
partner.
where we ended up today is around co-selling.
Yeah.
So we will never let a partner just sell us
Present your
directly,
solution, yeah.
but we will pull them into a deal, even if we're going it alone. And sometimes there's
You'll pull them into the deal as an ESP?
they could. So there are other partners that we might pull in. Sometimes it's the ESP.
Yeah.
But maybe they generate the opportunity for us. But in other cases, we say we should involve your partners, the technologies you're already using, and that.
Oh, so if they
ends
already
up being-
have the client, so if they're using an ESP,
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, you've
We'll
already used
proactively
this,
go
we're
in
gonna
there.
connect into, why don't we talk to their account exec?
Yeah.
So because they know how to navigate the sale.
They know the
Can
ins
you
and outs of that
piggyback on
account.
top of their approved vendors list and all that other stuff?
So American Express.
I just want people
Yeah.
watching to know
American
this is
Express-
the good stuff.
Yeah, the financial services company. we're
I did a deal with American Express, and
10-person team, and you'd be like, this is a nightmare. We're never going to get in there.
They asked me for more due diligence than any investor ever did.
We got walked into the door. Ryan's wearing a Movable Ink t-shirt. I have at least a button-down shirt. I'm like, Ryan, what are you doing? This is Amex. And we sit down, and like 10 people come to our meeting. We close the deal within 60 days of first meeting.
Incredible.
And this is because we were on cheetah's paper, and we streamlined some things. And so there's some amazing things that can happen when you have the right partner walking you in the door, giving you some intelligence, being a coach, and they've got a stake in the success of your business too.
I find it fascinating. I've never heard the strategy of if I've got an opportunity and I know that they have a technology already deployed and we integrate well, to actually reach out to them to co-sell together.
Yeah.
And obviously you might give up some points on that, but it's worth it to accelerate the deal.
Yeah.
And to then also say, hey, who else do you have that looks like this?
Yeah.
Right?
This is a very unconventional thing. And, going back 15 years, it was there can be only one.
Yeah.
You go into a deal and there's wallet share and you've got sharp elbows. And so we flipped that. And the way we sell now, we embrace all of our partners. We actively bring them in there. And surprisingly, we've got a great thing with Persado going. Surprisingly, there's a joint solution that the sum is greater than the parts. The clients love it, the customers love it, and it just juices the partnership. They want the problem solved, and they're like, "This is great. I've got 2-3 of my vendors working really well together.
You guys figure out the
and
details.
They're not fighting and telling me lies, and
they're talking bad behind each other's back to get a piece of the pie." How do you find those? I mean, Ryan, just a stud, but like, how have you found your other salespeople as you've grown? Like, because I'm assuming sales cycles are long, people can kind of talk the talk, deliver no results for months, and then it's just really tough. Like, what's your process today for recruiting and making sure that they can actually get the job done?
Depends on the era or the stage that the company was at. So early stage startup sales, I hired Ryan Pipkin through a friend's referral. I wanted someone who's going to be relentless. Ryan had zero experience in enterprise sales. He had been at, it was called AngelSoft. I think it's called Gus now, which is a deal management platform.
Yeah.
And when I hit up some friends, I wanted someone who could figure out this path with me and then be relentless.
Create the playbook with you.
Yeah.
Not somebody that you just follow.
And in fact, the lack of knowledge sometimes can be an advantage because you don't think
ignorance.
Yeah, ignorance. You're like, you don't know there's not a path here.
Yeah.
And sometimes you find that way through.
Yeah.
And so Ryan was awesome at this and really scrappy, and then like a machine. The second something worked, he was off to the races.
And you sold most of the initial deals, I'm assuming?
The two of us sold together. Ryan would tell me, would say I gave away too much business, and he was the real salesperson. Yeah. He gets a ton of credit for doing that, but I was out there selling, and then we were implementing our early customers too.
Yeah.
So first year, we sold maybe there was like nothing. Our total revenue was like $12,000. Our MRR was $200 a month in October of 2011, and we're like, this is not a real business. And then we sold a $6,000 pilot to DirecTV, a $12,000 pilot.
So this is a landing expand. So I'm a big fan of POCs, proof of concepts. Like, let's sell a pilot. Don't try to go for the full enterprise deployment.
Yeah.
Get in, one use case.
Yeah.
Right? Because that'll just.
We had no real logos. We had nothing really to go on.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was a hard slog.
Yeah.
And then a couple of those click, and we say, you know what? We got to go all in on enterprise. And like a couple of deals, we've sold more than everything else combined. Then we go all in, and then we're closing 1 deal a month. 2 deals a month. And suddenly this thing started to really, there's 10 things that might not work, and one of those things might not work, and the whole thing, the sales process doesn't play out. But when you have something that works, you've got to squeeze out all the value that you possibly can. And so we had a model, go to enterprise clients, talk about a use case that's meaningful, get them successful, and keep iterating on that. So the second year, we did $2.2 million in bookings.
Wow.
So it was just Ryan, and I hired a chief revenue officer, brilliant guy, this guy, Tim Bryan, who is at Castora right now. And we killed it, and then we kept doing that model. So scrappy people. So there was a good era, and then things stopped working after a while. We hired a bunch of people.
Was it because of low-hanging fruit that you took out of the market? Because I see that sometimes, like, they get too optimistic because it works really well, and then it's like, oh, you got all the early adopters, but now we got to cross the chasm. Or
it was we were successful in telling the story, but we weren't equally successful in getting our clients to adopt the really meaningful things. So the client experience team had to mature. as well.
Yeah,
and
getting
had
people
to talk
activated.
About, So there's some trivial things we were doing for our early customers, and over the years we honed that up. And so today a lot of things happen. There were industry seasoned salespeople, enterprise salespeople we hired. It turned out eventually not to work. They were used to selling
seasoned vets.
The seasoned vets.
Why didn't it work for them?
And I don't take anything away. I think they
could be successful in other places.
places. I think Orrin Hoffman writes about this, which is the different types of salespeople. And there is a relationship-based seller, and there's a more product-based seller that, depending on your type of company, you might need more. So what we were doing was a completely new type of technology, a new type of market, required real product knowledge, and the seller even had to be pretty competent in understanding the use cases and maybe demoing the technology. And that traditional type didn't seem to be able to do these things.
Relationship is traditional.
The relationship was
totally,
more traditional.
because they don't want to get into the weeds of the technology.
Yeah.
They just try to sell to the account.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's like the buyer needs to be a sophisticated buyer because it's it's innovation. I mean, what you guys were doing was like, the first time you see it, it does look like magic. Like, how did that do that? Why is that different for me than the guy? It's like, oh, well, now there's this, the data's there, the devices, like all that stuff. So it's like when you see something new, then you almost need to guide them to the use case. If not, it can just be too broad, and then you don't latch on to something.
Yeah. One of the terms I use is a mental model. I like when sales reps have a mental model of how the pitch is actually working and the elements that are at play. So if you have a rep, they can look perfectly fine. They can go end to end in a sales deck and deliver it convincingly and charmingly, but they don't really, if you go slightly off script, they don't really know what's happening, what's happening under the covers. So we needed people who could pivot on the fly, take a conversation wherever it needs to go, and may not be the most eloquent, but they really know their stuff.
Yeah.
And that turned out to work really well.
So that mean that you hired people that technically had more product knowledge and then taught them the sales skills?
Yeah. We have people pitch Movable Ink to us now. We do a simulation when we interview, and our successful sellers come in as BDRs, really. There's a guy now running our U.S. sales who was a lawyer before he came to Movable Ink. I didn't know what to do with him. We hired him to be a BDR. He crushed it, became an inside seller, crushed it, became an enterprise seller, crushed it, ran a small team, crushed it, and is now running U.S. sales.
Wow.
So fast capacity to learn very quickly. Even our worldwide sales head, he was our first salesperson on the upsell team, and just has shown this remarkable capacity to grow, lead teams, understand motivations, all this stuff. So we've grown reps really successfully, and that's a model that from BDR to STAR is the more seasoned BDR.
What's a STAR?
We call it a strategic account rep.
Walk me through. I'd love so BDR, then like junior, senior.
Yeah, so we've got two types of teams. There's an enterprise team and there's a mid-market team.
Yep.
The enterprise reps are called account executives, and they have BDRs to support them.
Yep.
And in the traditional SaaS world, the BDRs are doing all the outbounding and cold calling and just that, and they hand the lead over, the opportunity qualified to the rep. Yeah. We look at all of our BDRs and STRARs, which I'll describe in a second, almost like junior reps. They're being groomed for the next level in their career. Yeah. So we don't want them just to do that and not understand the mechanics of the client problem and how do you add value and what are the elements of making this industry successful. So BDRs and AEs for the mid-market team, we call them strategic account reps, which is basically STRARs, and STRADs, strategic account directors, on the enterprise teams. And that's been a really successful model, and we've seen people regularly learn the ropes.
So does a STAR not have SDR or BDR?
They don't. No.
So they essentially manage the whole sales process themselves.
They do, and there can be some outbounding. There is like getting the attention, but we have the seller on the first conversation. If you're lucky enough to get a VP of marketing at Starbucks, you don't want your most junior person who's never done this before. You want to bring your A team there, bring the seller, bring a partner in perhaps. We do a lot of intel on the account in advance of the first conversation. We subscribe to their emails.
Do you have it? Oh yeah, this is talk about that because I thought it was awesome. You essentially, you guys do a report with that for the industry or anything, or you guys have access to all their emails.
Yeah, there's a tool called Mail Charts.
Okay.
There was another one out there that you can get all the emails sent by every single brand. There's a company that goes out there and subscribes. So we can go look at this and look
You
at
can
the
go, this
pattern.
campaign, we could have done this with this.
Yeah, and so we come in with ideas that are tailored
So
to
you're
them.
pitching solutions.
Yes.
With their stuff.
We're solution selling. Yeah, totally.
Boom.
And we the big focus now, we call them director level objectives. We don't want to go talk about our product. We want to know this director or this VP, how are they being goaled? What are the key strategic initiatives for the
their
company?
comp, their role.
For their comp. How do you get promoted?
The
How
personal.
do you? Yeah.
How does this?
How do we make you a
look good?
hero? And then we try to figure out what is the best use of our technology to go connect to those objectives you own. And the
Will
sales
you
pitch.
pitch a solution that's going to get them a fast win so that you can look good and then you expand? Is that like?
Yeah, there's been some debate and change over the years, but and we have a lot of data to indicate that if you do what we call a meaningful or sophisticated use case, and it's tied to a key strategic initiative, the retention is off the charts, the net churn is off the charts.
So you
all
know that it
stuff.
may not be the bigger thing, but it's the first thing.
Yeah. So this could be the bigger thing.
Okay.
But we want to anchor. We don't want to have a trivial conversation around putting countdown clocks in your email.
Yeah.
We want to aim for the bigger thing, and maybe just to get you up and running, we might do the smaller thing, but we refocus you on the big thing constantly.
Because I mean, this is a thing I see in sales teams all the time, where the countdown clock example, perfect example, would be like the one thing they do that wows people.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't connect to a problem. So
there's a lot of sizzle, and the more junior, this is the other thing, the more junior you're selling
sizzle.
to, the marketing manager, they're like, I come in at 9, I want to leave at work at 5. What can I throw into my emails to make it perform better and I don't have to think about?
Yeah.
So you can be deceived as a salesperson going, oh, they're really engaged, they're going to sign a contract, they do all of these things.
Yeah.
But then they churn out, a year later because they've done that and they're like, this is fine, but we don't know what the value is.
Yeah.
So rather than set that kind of expectation, we try to make sure we're going high enough, but not too high in the org. Director level is sort of perfect for us.
I love that.
Someone has some responsibility, has some ownership, but you're not fighting for attention with the
So
CMO.
in the sales conversation, that's part, like, you guys say to your salespeople, go find that. Like, if you don't have a director level objective, we're not going to, like, is it like kind of like part of what an opportunity requires to be an SQL?
We're grading deals now, even as they come in.
Because to me, that's like, hey, that's the big thing. It's the thing.
It's the quality of the deal.
Yeah.
And don't be selling trivial stuff. And we're assigning grades and saying, is this an A, B, or C?
Yeah.
And you might get a $200,000 deal, but if it's a low quality, we're like, do we really want that?
Yeah.
I give you one
a
example.
little extra. Yeah. Do share, because I think it's just as a founder, it's having the fortitude, the discipline to say, hey, yeah, we could get that, but we know it's not going to be a great referenceable account. It's not going to have it's going to have a high churn. So we got to be patient. We need to really fight for the, director.
In the early days, you kind of take what you
money.
get. You got to get the case study, the
paid.
logo. You got to kind of build that up.
Yeah.
But later on, you start to really focus on the quality of the revenue, and recurring revenue that retains and upsells at a high rate is extremely important.
And you're going to give an example? I didn't want to cut you off,
of a company, of certain brands we know are going to churn. We've got a couple of presidential candidates now as clients, which is great, which is exciting. But we know if they're the winner or the loser, they're not going to be spending with us anymore. Yeah. So
is that from a resource point of view for you guys, like in regards to like, hey, we could spend a lot of time on this account, or like we could go after a different account and know that it'll stick around longer? Is that why?
It's a resourcing thing. It is a weight on our client services team to work with accounts that one day may not be around. So you've got to think about the lifetime value of the customer. Yeah. And is it worth that investment? And I'll give you an example. Mid-market accounts churn at a higher rate than enterprise accounts. Yeah. But we still do it. One, because we think there's a real mid-market business and it could be an acceptable level for us. And two, it is a proving ground and a training ground for our salespeople. So we like that. We don't want to give that up. We have people go from BDRs to account execs to senior account execs to enterprise strategic account directors.
And that's just to go back to that is the career path. You guys like to develop your sales team. They'll start typically at a BDR level.
Yeah. They don't always stick in sales. Yeah. So people, if you're just out of college, they can come in as a BDR, but then hey, they realize owning a quota isn't really for them, but they're technical, they can solve customer problems. The client experience team makes sense. Or they've shown some promise on the partner team potentially, and they could be good at BD or partnerships. So there's multiple routes and paths open to someone and they learn the ropes, they learn our industry, and they learn our
How many
products.
partners do you guys have today?
There are 130, I think.
And then in regards to how you guys kind of farm those partnerships, do you guys put together an editorial calendar for webinars, joint webinars, speaking at their events, booths and stuff? What's the implementation or the playbook for you guys for a partner?
Yeah, there are probably 3 categories of partners that we have. First, we do work with the ESPs and marketing clouds.
Yeah.
So we work with Salesforce, we work with Oracle, with Epsilon, with Cheetah Digital. That's one class, and there's clearly value, and that's where we cut our teeth initially. Then there are technology companies that when we plug into data sources that are unique and provide the intelligent creative layer on top of that. So we're a value add on top of a data set or an API provider you already have. So Pega, OfferPop, Curelate, Bluecore, BounceX, you name it, Telium.
Yeah, you're the use case for their data.
Yeah, we can be really compelling. So that makes a ton of sense for us, but there's a much higher volume of those types of companies. But we have a game plan for those. And then lastly, there's agencies and marketing service providers
the creatives.
that are building on top of our platform, delivering value, and services-driven businesses.
So they're bringing opportunities in as they work with clients.
Yeah, and they want to do more meaningful things for their clients and improve their marketing program. So Digitas or Dentsu in Japan's been a really good one.
The big agencies. And for you guys, is it 50-50 in regards to generated opportunities from partners versus your own named accounts or ABM?
Yeah. The generated opportunities.
I'm a big fan of partnerships. I don't know why companies don't. I mean, from a
really
CAC point of view, they're efficient. They can get you your first year, it can bring a windfall of really good logos.
Yeah, it's not always just opportunities generated. We also look at influenced by.
Okay.
And in the early days, it's a softer and fuzzier description. So CFOs like hard lines, like did they generate the opportunity or did they not? But having an ESP or a technology provider whisper in the ear, or give you some intel on what's important to this client,
so they're
really
helping
matters.
You navigate the sale.
And we have the data to show that our win rates double and our average selling prices increase significantly when we involve a partner. And there's a good reason to proactively do this, even if you think you got it.
This is even if you have somebody to be able to walk you through, almost act as a champion or a coach in the deal because they've sold. It's like, you need to talk to Mark in IT. Yeah. You talk to Jane in procurement.
Yeah, I'll give you one example. Amex, years ago, Cheetah said, it was like a throwaway statement. The VP of Biz Dev said, hey, you might ask Amex to prepay for a year. I don't think they'll have an issue with that. And we're like, really? That would be awesome for a cash-starved startup.
Cash rich.
We asked, and they had zero problem with that. And we're like, this is like one little sentence changed the value of that account for us. So it's stuff like that we learn. And
I think that's not as obvious to a lot of founders. Again, people watching 2 million, trying to get to 10. One thing that you shared with me is you guys do the customer conference, right?
Yes.
You've done it 2 years now?
We've done it now 3 years. And this year it'll be our 4th one.
It'll be 4th. Yeah. And what have you learned about that in regards to, I just assume there's all these values, you've got this timeline, this artificial timeline from a product point of view, right? Because you want to be on stage to announce the new stuff. You've got this reason for connecting with prospects that are in pipeline, invite them out. You've got customers you can put on stage that are gonna, I feel like Dreamforce is always, and HubSpot's done a great job at inbound.
Yeah.
What are the things that you do that gets you big ROI from your customer conference?
Yeah. Events have been awesome for ROI for us. And it started very organically from our client services team, in fact, not even our sales team, going out to visit a city, and we'd get a bunch of our customers together for a dinner. So it'd be 10 or 12 people together for a dinner, and it would be conversational, casual, and it just seemed to...
These are post-purchase
clients, and we get them in a room and talking to one another, and we'd have a dinner
share
and
best
facilitate
practices
that.
And just add some value.
And we did that, and we said, wow, they're really engaged with us. They're coming to our dinner. Starbucks is coming to our dinner. And so that was exciting. And we said, why don't we do a slightly bigger version of that and do a road tour? And we called it our email transformation tour. And we picked a few cities, and we got 60 or 70 people at these things. Yeah. Like a rock concert sort of thing.
Yeah. We're going to be in your city next week.
Yeah. And so suddenly we're like, wow, 60 or 70 people showing up at every...
70 people.
Yeah.
And what, 30% were clients? The rest of them were prospects?
Yeah, we had a mix, usually half and half.
Would you ask your current customers to invite somebody like them at another company?
We could.
Or do you build it yourself?
We fielded it ourselves, and we
just
made
say like,
sure,
hey, do you want to meet the VP of marketing at this company?
Yeah, and we'd have useful content for them. And we had sometimes a guest speaker.
And what were you doing? Is
product
it like a
updates.
lunch, an extended lunch, or a night event, or?
It was usually there's a cocktail hour. Oftentimes it was like at a bar or something, and we do a little presentation maybe for an hour. We've done it in London and Stockholm and
So it
Tokyo.
wasn't formal content. You literally just like drinks and then 45-minute
we had
talk.
45 an hour and then socializing after.
Yeah.
And that turned out really good. And we looked at the ROI very carefully. We used Splash to track our events and use them. And the ROI, our events ROI, was really good. And so we said, you know what? I think we have enough of a critical mass to do a customer conference. And I think that first year maybe we had 180 or 200
How
customers.
long did you do that for 2 years? Kind of the nighttime dinners and the cocktail
It's still
hours?
going. So we never stopped
But
that.
before the first customer conference.
For how long?
Kind of
maybe
like
for
3 million ARR plus ish.
This was maybe 4 or 5 the dinners, so 4 years ago maybe or so. So perhaps we were like 15 million ARR or something like that.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well. So that turned into our first client summit, and we're like, wow, everyone showed up, and it was at the Dream Hotel, and we were really nervous. You're trying to fill and like, are we wasting our money on this thing? Do people care?
Did you charge the clients to go? A few $100?
We didn't charge the first 2 years.
Sponsors.
We didn't. We paid the
covered
first
the
year.
cost.
The
Yeah,
first
and then
year.
you're like, whoa.
And then we had sponsors the following year.
Yeah.
And last year was the first time we actually charged a fee. And we've got some VIP tickets, but we had our clients there, put them on stage. This amazing larger than life event happens, and it becomes, your brand really gets built.
Yeah.
And so this last year we had 600 marketers in, totally blanking on the name of the bank that's in Midtown, but this old building that's got like a Roman style, giant vault, all that stuff. So huge stage, and it looked like this larger than life thing. So people showing up. There's our whole premise is visual is the language that moves people. In today's world, visual is how people can communicate, and our events were in line with that kind of branding and that strategy. And when you get clients that are happy and they're talking to one another, we literally had VPs pulling aside others and just raving about us next to them. You can't get a better warm recommendation than something like that happening versus than a salesperson doing it. So it was this amazing thing we start to see happen. The ETTs still happen. We have a customer advisory board now. So there's a lot more community. And I think TK Cater.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I remember TK years ago. He's like, I don't want to build a company. I want to build a religion. So he has a little L. Ron Hubbard tendency maybe. But there was a really brilliant insight in that, which is there's a movement, there's a community that's happening, and you can, and it's bigger than just your company. And Gainsight does this too.
Yeah. No, I feel like, back in the day, there was Crowdflower. I think it was called CrowdConf. Like, it's interesting because there's two models that I've seen. There's kind of like the industry conference. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't exist, creating it, owning it, which is, some degree Inbound did that by owning the word. And I think Drift's doing a great job, which is the same playbook around conversational marketing. And then there's really just a customer conference, which, one cool example I saw was Lead Pages, where they, in a registration flow, so in the sign up, they actually upsold me to the ticket for the event. I was speaking, but I appreciated the fact that they were like, they had two upsells, one to a 3-year. If I paid for 3 years, I got 60% off. Right? It's kind of a no-brainer. If you know you're going to be around and you're going to use the product. And then they were like, hey, we've got this customer conference. It's $600 a ticket, but if you buy it now, it's $300. And it's just like...
And you're speaking at it.
Yeah, but I just thought it was neat that they used the registration flow to fill up their event.
Yeah.
And then, and from a retention, you guys get the data. Like, if somebody comes to your event, they're probably way more higher at lifetime value customer than if they don't.
Yeah.
Right?
And we deal with enterprises. So, 600 people there... director level, VP level.
That's a lot of
major speakers, and they're getting up on stage and talking about your company. The social proof of that. It's just a reinforcing thing that happens, and there's nothing bigger you can do for your brand than your first. And you never feel you're ready. You're nervous to do your first client summit, and you got to at some point, if you've done it at the smaller scales and you've got a little bit of a playbook, you've got to bite the bullet and just do it. It's time to move to the next level as a company.
Yeah. What would you have done them sooner? What knowing what you know now, going back to the event as a marketing or as a customer, what's your prescription?
As a more seasoned operator now, I would certainly do it sooner in a company. But that early on, there's just so many like logistical details and planning, and so your team, the team that's going to implement that really has to be ready.
Dedicated to it.
Yeah, and we have a wonderful director of marketing who took that on.
Wow.
She'd never done anything at that scale, but she's just meticulous, detailed, follow through. That first year, she probably didn't sleep for like weeks, but she did an amazing job and just created an experience, a true experience for every single person. So if you have a team that can pull that kind of thing off, because you as the CEO, you've got just way too many things going on. Yeah. You got to lean on that person to help drive it. It can be an amazing thing.
One question I love to ask founders is, it's kind of a deep question, but whatever, we're friends. Who did you need to become to build this business? Like what are the things when you look back at when you started versus how you lead today and who you've become? What are the...
Yeah. There's something we talk about at Movable Ink, which is pushing yourself into an area that you're slightly uncomfortable constantly. And if you're not slightly uncomfortable, you're probably not growing. And so I was a former engineer. So my bias was to probably not get out there and go selling a product. It was to go come up with a brilliant idea and whiteboard it and go build this thing.
People will just buy.
And years ago, I actually started a company that failed because I didn't do enough being in front of clients, engaging with them, understanding what kind of pain points they deal with. So it's pushing some of that stuff away that I'm naturally comfortable in, and doing sales, getting out there and speaking at events, doing the keynote at things, and just making and also improving yourself. So I've got coaches that work on different aspects of it, from speaking to how I'm building a team, how I'm leading, different playbooks that you can apply. So that constant pushing yourself and never allowing yourself to fall into a zone of comfort is what's needed. And I try to step back and work on the company rather than in it, and think about what does the company need from me to go to that next level. And you've got to push yourself. Sometimes it's a little scary to do that, but that's where the growth happens, and that's where the rewards to your company will really accrue. And it also lets other people step up into really meaningful roles.
So you mentioned coaches in different aspects. So investing in yourself to become that person. Was that something that in the beginning you thought you'd have to do, or just you discovered it through wanting to perform?
I didn't. I didn't know I'd have to do that. And I think I've probably been the kind of person who's prefers to learn by doing, and maybe I'm a little stubborn, or I figure I can go find a way, or I can go sell, and I get the feedback. At some point as the company gets larger, you don't have the room for error as much, and it's very valuable to learn how other people have done things, and you can take what's useful and discard what is not. But you can reflect on that, and you put your ego away. You have to be a beginner at certain things. That's totally okay, and it's okay to fail at giving a presentation or doing a sales meeting or learning from others. I find I'm constantly learning from the people that I've hired. And it's like, wow, that person's really good at running a meeting, or at the next steps in a sales meeting, or presenting in this thing. And so be a constant student is super valuable. And to do that, you have to put your ego away.
I love it. Where can people find you online? What platforms?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I've found that is the secret
it's
social
surprising,
network.
Man. It keeps creeping back up in my life. I actually check LinkedIn a couple of times a week now.
It's really effective. I found more than Twitter, more than any other channel, more than Instagram.
For business, for
B2B. Yeah. And we're able to reflect our whole visual as a language that moves people. So we try to kind of Instagram effect on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I heard the organic posts are doing incredibly well.
It's incredibly effective, and I connect with all of our big clients, our partners, and so
Direct
they see the stuff.
To the CEO.
Yeah, they see the stuff. They hear directly from me. I post things, updates, and so subtly your brand, you can't directly attribute to everything that you're posting, but people will say, wow, Movable Ink is everywhere. I hear about you guys all the time, and suddenly it snowballs and your brand becomes a larger-than-life thing.
I love it. Vivek Sharma, appreciate you, man.
Thanks
so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching this episode of Escape Velocity. Be sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment with your biggest insight from our conversation. Be sure to check out the next episode.